Okay, I think most of our kids are actually back in the back room. In a moment, you're going to see a slide up here of some camel crafts, and that fits in with our story today. So I guess if you want some inspiration and you like to keep your hands busy, you can go home and do some crafting this afternoon and remember what we talked about. But again, like I said, we have some other options for our kids this morning. It looks like most of them have opted in that way. So I want to give you a quick recap. We're in a series called Relationships on the Rocks, which sounds oh so positive. And that is a different slide. Okay. I kicked back somewhere else. There we go. Okay. But the last week we talked a little bit about hospitality. And this week we're going to have it's not necessarily positive. It's kind of positive. Could be neutral. It's definitely not negative. And the next week we'll get back into the problems that we see these families encounter in the book of Genesis, and it gets ugly real fast again. And sometimes it looks a lot like our lives as well. Things are unpredictable. Things are challenging and difficult in different seasons of life. And we really have to be careful how we relate with each other because we can get into conflict and problems really fast. But again, like I said, this week will be it's a different angle, and I think it provides a good complement to what we're talking about in this series. But real quick, I'll recap last week. So we talked about how Abraham provides a taste of Eden, this Garden of Eden abundance. There's a little flavor of that through showing hospitality to 3 unexpected strangers. Some of you probably love hospitality, even if people are unexpected. Others of you, maybe you're not, that keen on inviting people into your home. But it's something that really can help show God's abundance to people that he's placed in our lives. And Abraham, he runs out when he sees these guests and he honors them. In their culture, they bow down and they have greetings and they run instead of walking, and that shows that they're important. And we do different things in our culture to tell people, to express to people that they're valuable to us, right? He comforts them. He gives them water to wash their feet and their hands and rest and shade and a snack. And maybe we do things in our home to provide comfort, a warm, comfortable environment, and that's important. He also provides an abundance of good food. I mentioned last week, we love to do taco nights at our house and bring out all the toppings. You eat until your heart's content. And he serves them. And he sees hospitality as a divine appointment, something that God has planned, even something unexpected. Like God knew ahead of time these people would have needs, and Abraham sees an opportunity to meet that. And that's really an act of worship. And maybe you didn't think of hospitality as worship, but God really sees it that way. It's a way of worshiping God by showing hospitality to other people in our lives. And it's not one way. These guests who come, they want to be a blessing to their host. What can we do? What can we bring into this? And sometimes we invite guests and they maybe bring a gift or bring something to contribute to the meal. But in some way, when we're guests of other people, we want to try to be a blessing to them. And in this case, Abraham's guests brought some very, very good news with them. And that was intentional. And we need to be intentional about reciprocating. When people show hospitality to us, how can we be a blessing back to them? And so that's what we talked about last Sunday morning. Today we're going to get into something, I called this coincidence. I'm going to fast forward past our camel craft because that will not be relevant anymore. But there's some extra on the table if you want to take one as you leave today. So we're going to talk about coincidence. And in our lives, it's interesting as a follower of Jesus how sometimes things happen. And when several things begin to line up, you look at these things and you're like, is this just an accident? Is this a coincidence? Or is God in this? And you begin to see in certain kinds of circumstances how maybe God's involved in this. And maybe this isn't just like random chance. Maybe this is God actually orchestrating things and events in my life. And so we're going to talk about how to recognize those kinds of things today. It's an aspect of relationships. As we make decisions, as we relate with each other, sometimes God piques our interest and we realize like the odds of all these things lining up, like this is more than coincidence, right? God's hand might be in this. And this is something that I think Christine and I have experienced over the past several months. As Jeremiah mentioned, most of you are aware, some of you might not be, we're in a transition place in our lives. And 6 months ago, we would have never seen this coming. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, Jason, would you ever leave Southern Utah? I would say, of course not. I love living here. What about Mountain View Bible Church? I love the people at Mountain View Bible Church, and that hasn't changed. But God did some things that to us seemed like a lot more than coincidence. Just so happened that he brought up this job posting in another place, a place that I'd interned at before college, or in my college years. And it just so happened that when I looked into the details of that, I noticed that some of the people that were maybe overseeing this, a pastor at the church and somebody higher up in leadership, were people that I already had relationships with. One person I even worked with during my internship. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I would never move. I love it here in southern Utah. And then we went on a family vacation this summer, and the first question my sister-in-law asked was, so, would you ever consider moving back to this area? I said, no, I don't think so. I don't know that I would consider that. And then I had some conversations with Christine because God kept bringing up this other thing, in my mind. And I said, would you ever consider living anywhere else or doing anything else? Thinking she was born and raised here, right? We have family in this area. And she's like, I'd be open. I said, what? You'd be open? Okay. And so we talked more. I said, do you think maybe I should step into this process and just see if any doors open or close? Like, I think we should. And as we began to step in, these crazy things happened, and different events and circumstances just opened. And then a lot of the things that we had responsibilities for here, my wife is involved in a homeschool co-op, and so there's about 45 students that meet in our church building every Wednesday who homeschool, and about 15 to 20 parents every week that are involved. And Christine spearheaded this. And so she said, well, let me see how this would work out, because we want this to be able to continue. So she talked to her leadership team, and they said, yeah, we can make this happen without you. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And so as we just began to step in different ways, it was like God was rolling out the red carpet saying, move forward in this direction, right? And it wasn't like there were no challenges. Change is hard. And there's a lot of unknowns. How will our kids respond to this circumstance? What will life be like in a new place? But at the same time, it seemed like circumstances were kind of confirming, right, the areas where we felt like God's Holy Spirit was leading. So that gives us a lot of faith that God will continue to work out things, not only for us, but for this church community and for our friends here in the area, and for the homeschool group that we're a part of, and all these different things, right, because we see God working. And that's what we start to see in the story today. And the reason why I want to share it with you is because you might have God do similar things in your life, where he just brings about these coincidences, and then more coincidences just start happening. And you might realize, I think this is more than an accident. I think God's hand might be in this. And it's a way that he leads people. Not always, but sometimes. And maybe it's a way that he's going to lead you. It's the way that he's leading us. And so we just need to be aware, if we're people seeking to follow God, this may be a way that he tries to get our attention. So let's step into a story for the next maybe 15, 20 minutes today, and we'll learn some from that. This is in Genesis 24, if you want to read along or check out the story later. We're dealing with Abraham, who's one of the people that God is forming a relationship with, his family in Genesis. It says, Abraham was old, getting on in years, and the Lord had blessed him in everything. Abraham said to his servant, now this is like the manager of his entire estate, his household. So this is somebody with great responsibility, who's probably also a close friend of his, who's right now going to, before he had a son, would have been his heir. So Abraham said to his servant, the elder of his household who managed all he owned, place your hand under my thigh. Kind of a weird cultural custom, but it was a way he was going to swear an oath. And I'll have you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live. We talked about Canaan several weeks ago. He and his father, Ham, they had a lot of kind of abusive practices that carried on for generations. And so Abraham was concerned that some of those practices and cultural customs that tended to be abusive and were focused on different gods besides the God, the true and living God that Abraham interacted with and worshiped, would have a negative influence on his son. And so he said, I want to send you back to where I came from to find a wife for my son from people there. He says, I want somebody who will go to my land and my family to take a wife for my son Isaac. If the woman is unwilling to follow you, then you're free from this oath to me, but don't let my son go back there. So it's arranged marriage at this point in time where the parents select a bride or groom for their spouse. And one of those things is that, and this exists in other cultures today, right? There are cultures that still arrange marriages. And so we think of things differently in our culture, but this is very normal culturally at that point in time. But he says, if this girl that you find another place, and I'm sure God's going to work this out, if she doesn't want to come back, then like you don't have to search anymore. You're free from this commitment. So he asks Eliezer, his servant, to find a wife for Isaac from the land of his relatives. Eliezer, it's that word Ezer, which is the word that's translated helper that God makes for Adam. The better translation is a strong ally. Eliezer means God is my strong ally. And so this story is going to show us how God is our strong ally, walking alongside of us through our decisions to help give us leading and guidance along the way. Okay, so there's that nuance as well. Abraham, again, he's confident the Lord will make his journey successful. I didn't put all these verses up there. There's 59 of them, and there's no way we're going to cover all those verses today. But Abraham is very confident that God will go before his servant and make this quest successful. So the servant took 10 of his master's camels, and with all kinds of his master's goods in hand, he went to Aram Naharaim, to Nahor's town. So this is a 600-mile journey back from where we think of as Israel today up into northeast Syria and northern Iraq currently, into the ancient land of Mesopotamia. So a 600-mile journey, 10 camels, several different people in this caravan as well. It says at evening, the time when the women went out to draw water, he made the camels kneel beside a well outside of the town. So there's a spring coming up, and they've made a well there. Water's available. But he doesn't water his camels. He prays. He says, Lord, God of my master Abraham, make this happen for me today. The word happen, you're going to see it come up in your English translations of the Bible. And in Hebrew, he prays, let a happening happen. We might say, let a coincidence happen, right? We have the phrase, it just so happened. And when you see the word happen in the Old Testament, that's what it should activate. Oh, this is something that happened, but it might be more than a coincidence. This might be God orchestrating circumstances in my life or in someone else's life. He's saying, God, make something happen that you're going to make happen, right, for me. Show this kindness to my master. I'm standing here at the spring where the daughters of the men of the town are coming out to draw water. Let the girl to whom I say, please lower your water jug so that I may drink, and he responds, drink, and I'll water your camels also. Let her be the one that you've appointed for your servant Isaac. So he kind of sets out a very specific prayer. And this is not something that's easy. How many camels does he have with him? 10. Anybody have a guess as to how many gallons of water a thirsty camel consumes at one time? 30 gallons. I have a 30. What else? 80. We're right in range. 30 to 50 is common. Within a couple of minutes, they're fast. Okay, so they're like, oh, water, it's been days. Right? And so that's a lot. Now these jugs, they were clay jars that the women would carry water to and from the homes, from the well in the spring. Think about 2.5 to 3 gallons. So let's say it's not that thirsty of a camel. It only wants 30 gallons to drink. That's 10 trips for one camel. Spring to the trough, spring to the trough, spring to the trough. Multiply that by 10. It's only 100 trips back and forth with 24 gallons or 24 pounds of water, right? Only 100 trips to water the camels until they finish. So this is kind of a bold, very specific prayer. And we found ourselves at times when we were looking for God's direction, praying kind of specific things. There was one time where Christine actually prayed, if this is something that you want us to step into, can you have someone call us the next day and want to set up an in-person interview? And the next day, someone called us and said, we want to bring you out for an in-person interview. And we said, oh, how interesting, the timing. And sometimes we need to maybe pray specifically in certain ways as we're seeking God's direction. So Eliezer asked the Lord to cause a very specific thing to happen, which is not necessarily easy to find someone to do. Before he had finished speaking, okay, there was Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. So kind of a relative. It's the granddaughter of Abraham's brother, coming out with a jug on her shoulder. It says the girl was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had been intimate with her, so she's eligible. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, came up. That's interesting. Guy hasn't even stopped praying yet. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please, let me have a little water from your jug." And she replied, "Drink, my lord." She quickly lowered her jug to her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I'll draw water for your camels until they've had enough to drink." That's interesting. So she quickly emptied her jug into the trough and hurried to the well again to draw water. And it should say again and again and again and again and again. She drew water for all of his camels, all 10. It says, while the man silently watched her to see whether or not the Lord had made his journey a success. He's like, is she really going to follow through with this? And she did. So we kind of start analyzing things in our life. Rebekah approaches the well with the jar on her shoulder before Eliezer finishes praying. And that's kind of interesting because Eliezer is looking at the timing. I just asked God for this, and there's this girl walking to the well, and I haven't even stopped talking to the Lord yet. That's interesting timing, but I still don't know if this is the right person. She's beautiful. The story says she's eligible, and so that's fitting, right? Circumstances are looking good. And then she gives him a drink, which is the first thing that he requested. And then after he drinks, she says, "I'll water your camels too." And we talked about how much they drink and how much this is involved, right? You're transporting a lot of water. This is a lot of work and a lot of inconvenience. And it's amazing that any human would want to do something like that. Because remember, it's not just Eliezer. There's other men that have come with him. And it'd be very easy for somebody to justify, like, you don't need me to water your camels. There's you and there's several guys. And you can transport water a lot easier than us. So why in the world would she offer something like that? But she was empathetic, and she had a heart of concern, which tells us things about her heart, hopefully, as well, at least in this moment. It says, as the camels finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel, and for her wrist, 2 bracelets weighing 10 shekels of gold. Whose daughter are you? Because he knows he's in the land, close to Abraham's relatives, but he doesn't know who she is at all. Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she says, "Oh, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She also said, "We got plenty of straw and feed and a place to spend the night." And it says, then the man, Eliezer, he knelt low and worshiped the Lord because he realizes this isn't just the land where my master's relatives live. This is the granddaughter of Abraham's brother. Is that just coincidence, right? So more circumstances. This is a distant relative. This is the kind of the family that we're looking for someone from, ideally. Laban and Bethuel answered. This is fast forwarding in the story. So just a quick recap. They invite Eliezer and his men and camels to come to the house, and they set a meal before him. They do hospitality as well there. And they have a conversation. And half of the story is Eliezer repeating what I just repeated. He's sharing exactly what happens. He shares the same thing. The same thing is shared 3 times. That's why it's 59 verses for the story, because what happened is shared 3 different times in different situations. But Laban, who is Rebekah's brother, and Bethuel, who's Rebekah's father, they hear all of this, and their response is, this is from the Lord. These things don't just happen by accident. Look at how everything is lined up. You prayed this, she showed up then, she offered to do this very specific thing. We're relatives. That's what Abraham told you to look for ideally in the first place. This looks like the Lord's hand in this. We have no choice in the matter. This is God's doing. Then they say, Rebekah is here in front of you. Take her and go, and let her be a wife for your master's son, just like the Lord has spoken. And so again, they recognize God's involvement, and they open a door of opportunity. But also, this is another kind of level of trying to assess things. Eliezer is getting confirmation through counsel from others, right? He's not just making this decision and saying, this is what needs to happen. These are other people who are vested in this decision, like her dad and her brother, and they both see the same thing. And throughout this process of us making huge decisions for huge change in our lives, we sat down and had some important conversations with some very close friends, some of whom are sitting in this room right now, and said, this is what's happening in our lives. What do you think? Do you think God's hand is in this? Do you think we're crazy? Right? And so we got wisdom from other people. And that was also something that for us became more of a confirmation that we were indeed headed in the right direction for us. And so that's another element, is inviting other people and their comments and their counsel into our decision making. Verse 58 says, they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? So there's another level, right? In their culture, the men of the family, the father and the brother, they have the right to make decisions. But this affects Rebekah as well, and so they bring her into it, and they say, well, is this something that you're willing to do? Are you going to go with this man? Now remember, you're a young girl. Your life was normal until you went to a well and offered to water someone's camels the day before. Everything was great. You had your own life and your own plans, maybe. And all of a sudden, somebody from a strange land 600 miles away wants to take you away to marry someone that you've never met. Are you willing? Most people would be like, heck no. No way. I'm not doing something like that. But in this case, Rebekah is willing. She says, I will relocate. I'll move away to an unknown place and marry somebody that I don't know. Right? Because I think the Lord's hand is in this. I'm open to that. And again, I spoke about having these conversations with my wife, Christine. Are you open to something totally different and strange and new? If the answer would have been no, that would have been where things stopped, right? But because the answer was, yeah, I'm open, then we pursued things a little bit further. And sometimes openness is a strange thing. You look back and you go, why was I ever willing to entertain that? What was I thinking? But you just maybe have a peace about something being okay or being a good direction to investigate. And so she is strangely willing. So they sent her away, their sister Rebekah, with the one who had nursed and raised her, and Abraham's servant and his men. So she has the person in the household who is responsible for raising her in this very large household goes with her. She's not alone, but she goes into this very different place. It says, they blessed Rebekah, saying to her, our sister, may you become thousands upon 10,000s. May your offspring possess the city gates of their enemies. And so, just one final observation. God's leading actually invites Rebekah into a whole new realm of blessings, because God intended to bless ultimately the earth through Abraham's family. And she was a distant relative, but she certainly wasn't a part of the family and a part of this line of people that would eventually lead to the birth of the Messiah, the Christ, Jesus, centuries and centuries and centuries later. And so she got to be kind of brought into a realm of blessings that if she had not stepped out in faith, she wouldn't have been able to experience in such a real, direct, personal way. And sometimes when we see God leading in our lives and we decide, I want to step into this path that I see God directing me into, it actually brings about blessings that we would have never experienced otherwise, right? And so it has to do with optimism about change. Sometimes we are asked, we feel like, or led to kind of the edge of stepping into a lot of change in our lives. And we can be really negative or pessimistic, or we can see the opportunity and the blessing that lies ahead in that. And even through us stepping into a lot of change, it forces you all into a position of stepping into a lot of change. And so instead of being pessimistic or lacking faith or being negative, maybe part of the next step for you is to see God's blessing. Maybe this is a new realm of blessing that will impact all of you very directly as well. It's good sometimes to step back, and God works in our lives in mysterious ways. And when you read in the Bible, it just so happened that this happened, realize that it's not a coincidence. It's God's hand that's involved, or people are claiming that it's God's hand that's involved. And just like we see God working in our lives through more than coincidences, confirming his leading, you can expect to see God leading you in your life in different specific ways. And this story is just, I would say, a little picture of some different angles to look at that from. How is God leading? Is it circumstances? Is it timing? Is it the counsel of other people? What is God leading you into? Is it something to be afraid of? Is it something negative that's going to harm you? Or is it something good that's going to invite blessing if you step into that new realm? These are all things for us to consider as we, again, navigate relationships and we make decisions within our own families and friends and co-workers as we navigate our life together. So that's what I want to leave with you today, is looking for God's hand in situations, his confirmation. It's likely that you'll run into more than coincidences in your lives too. Let's go ahead and pray together this morning.